I'm not the house of cards that falls down easily. Ooh, I'm strong enough to handle what you throw at me.
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I'm your host, Kristen Sunanta Walker. Just what are we going to discuss? The intimacy that is mental health. Let's continue to make it as comfortable as discussing brain health or heart health. This show has been on the air for several years and we have amazing co-hosts. And then we created a network of podcasters on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com, a place where every possible facet of mental well-being can be talked about openly. My show, after several hundred interviews, the format is this: intimate, deep, funny, touching, sometimes uncomfortable, but always vulnerable conversations with interesting people. The goal is to have you, our listening family, many of you who have become my good friends, feel as though you are listening in on private conversations. Thank you for tuning in and becoming part of this amazing journey with me, and now with our network of podcasters. Just knowing this podcast might be helping any of you realize you are not alone on this journey called being a human being makes doing this podcast worth every second.
After all we promised we'd be cordial.
Hey everyone, our guest today wrote an article called "It's Okay to Want to Live a Slow and Quiet Life." And since that's what I'm all about, I wanted to talk to her. She was absolutely delightful. Her name is Amanda Whitworth, and she talks about living in her yurt, tending to her garden, and her animals. So join us.
Hi, everyone. Kristen Sunanta Walker here. And we recently, or I came across an article by a lovely woman by the name of Amanda Whitworth, who's on the show. It's called "It's Okay to Want to Live a Slow and Quiet Life." And it was on Elephant Journal, which I love that outlet. So, Amanda, thank you so much for coming on the show and agreeing to talk about what that means.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you want me just to go into my story a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us why, why this and what kind of response. I'm interested in hearing too. What kind of response have you gotten from that article?
Yeah. Well, I will go into the article first. It's interesting when I write it, I kind of channel it, and I've tried kind of sitting down and having a system, and it doesn't work that way. And I write from what I'm experiencing in the moment and feeling. And I had no idea that article was going to get the response that it got. And it kind of makes me realize that a lot more people are longing for this lifestyle than I think we are led to believe. And this article came about after just a really long time, many years of struggling with depression, pretty severe depression, and anxiety and panic attacks. And it all came to head in, I think it was March, where I suffered some pretty debilitating panic attacks that actually resulted me ending up in a psychiatrist's office. And I got the diagnosis of PTSD and borderline personality disorder. And I want to kind of preface by saying that I don't believe that these labels define who we are as people. I believe that they are tools to kind of get us back on the right track and to really kind of tap back into who we are and to deal with all of our trauma. And so it was in that moment when I got these diagnoses that I realized that something had to change in my life. And I had been feeling really called back to a slower, simpler way of life. I grew up in the woods, and then for a short time I lived on a vineyard and a farm in Oregon. And both of those times in my life, I felt most like myself. And so I realized that my path to healing was going to be getting back to that way of life and simplifying everything in my life, which led me to where I currently am now on a 7.5 acre goat farm in Northern California, living in a yurt.
I love it. I love it. My listeners know, because I've talked about it, I live in a 550 square foot tiny home on a little farm And I grew up in the, Orange County, Southern California, and LA. So this is a far cry from, how I grew up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was necessary. It was necessary in order for me to just have any kind of measure of peace, which is why I really resonated with what you wrote. And I love yurts also, and goats. So
Yeah. I didn't have any idea that I would love living in a yurt as much as I did. In fact, yurt life was probably the last form of alternative living that I ever would consider. And it was just by mere serendipity that I ended up here in one. And it's amazing. I am so in love with it.
So how long have you been doing the yurt life?
I've been living here since the beginning of August. So 4 months now. Yeah. Just approaching the 4-month mark. Yeah.
Gotcha. I'm 2 years in, and I'm just now, because I move around a lot. I like to live in different places. So spending about one weekend a month at a different funky Airbnb. Thank goodness for Airbnb place. It helps curb my needing to move, but I am starting to feel like, okay, staring at the same four walls all the time is getting to me a little bit. But I'm 2 years in, so.
Yeah. I definitely have that pattern as well. And ironically, I grew up in the same house for 17 years. And then after that, my last home, which was in Southern California, where I just moved from, I lived there for 4.5 years. So that was the longest place I lived since my childhood home.
Yes, I understand. Yep.
Yeah. But I am such a homebody. So it's so interesting to me. So I'm hoping to root down here and just ground down and be here for a while.
Yeah, tell me about the goats. Did you have experience with goats? Were they already there? Were these goats, explain the whole goat part.
Yeah, well, I actually live on somebody's property. So it's a multi-dwelling property. There's 5 different kind of pre-existing homes, 2 yurts, a small cabin. There's a trailer at the bottom that's going to actually be converted into a tiny home. And then my landlord's house, which has an Airbnb. And so she's had this property for 35 years, and she had a huge goat ranch. And so the goats were already here, but I've had goats when I lived on a farm. I like to say in a past life, I had 4 goats, 21 sheep, 25 chickens, a llama, 3 dogs, and a cat. So...
Wow. Okay. So you're experienced in the whole multiple critters experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the animals just bring me so much happiness and peace. And it was a big intention of mine when I realized that I needed to simplify my life and get back to what truly makes me happy, was being somewhere where I was surrounded by a ton of animals.
Yeah, it's interesting. They're wonderful, and boy, I have to sometimes, sit back and count, how much, not as if I'm actually counting, but think about how many times today have I had pure joy and laughter and just a smile on my face, and weigh that against how many times I'm like, oh, what are they doing now?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the joy far outweighs,
Oh yeah. In regards to animals, definitely. I am always going, I have a dog and a cat personally, and they're best friends, and my dog is a puppy. And so he's very high energy. And so I'm constantly getting frustrated at him, but he's also making me laugh like crazy. And I don't know what I would do without them. They have been such a huge part of everything.
Yeah. And they were a huge part with dealing with depression or, dealing with trauma, things like that. I mean, I have 2 little 4-month-old Texas healers, and talk about needing activity. And I'm used to having border collies, so I'm used to high energy dogs. But, a 4-month-old puppy is a lot of work. And there's 2 of them. And boy, do they, thank God, because they roll around and attack each other instead of expecting, if it was just one of them, me to do all that all the time. But
Yeah.
even with the frustration that comes with the barking, which if anybody just heard, that was them, because I'm staying at an Airbnb right now, and there's a yard, and there are neighbors, and they don't know the neighbors, and so they have to bark during my podcast. But
Oh, yeah.
whatever, such is, 20 minutes from now when we're done, I will be laughing hysterically over some ridiculous thing that they've also done. And
Oh, yeah.
that's what we're talking about that makes it worth it.
Totally. Absolutely.
So when you got your diagnoses, what made you think simplifying was going to be a way to help you, manage what was going on with you?
I think that it was a couple of things. Like I had been feeling called back to this way of life for a while. I moved to a small town. Well, it's not really that small. Southern California town called Encinitas, just north of San Diego. Shortly after I went through a divorce, and I actually lived with my ex-partner on the farm. And so I always knew, but it was his family's property. So when we split up, I had to leave. And that was pretty devastating for me because I felt so much like myself there. And then I moved back up to Seattle to be with family for a little bit. And then about 9 months later, moved down to Southern California because I always had these dreams of being a beach girl. And I thought I was a Southern California girl. And, just from my time being there, I realized that I wasn't. Where I felt most like myself was on land, on a farm with animals, and just kind of tending to the land, gardening, doing projects. And so I'd been feeling called back to that. It was when I was diagnosed. I was actually diagnosed with PTSD from just years and years of various experiences with cancer with myself and my family. So I knew that I had to make a change really quickly. It was kind of like, I don't know, not to be super dramatic, but it was a matter of life or death. I knew that I wasn't going to really start healing emotionally and physically until I got back here. So it was pretty quick after I started realizing that I needed to make this happen.
And how do you, sort of stay disconnected or connected to different things, I should say, I would say healthier things, and also be plugged into technology, have a YouTube channel, have an Instagram account? I mean, you know where I'm going with that.
Yeah, it's been an interesting ride. I think part of my depression was just seeking the external validation from all of those outlets and not understanding that all really does come from within, and kind of being in a place of joy in your life, and learning what that means to you. So it's been it's still hard. I still kind of get wrapped up in it, and it's me having to remind myself none of that matters, and just getting back to I share because I want to help other people going through similar things or who are interested in kind of adopting this way of life. And it's not about the numbers or the likes. So it's a balance. It's just constantly checking in with yourself and knowing why you're doing what you're doing, and kind of getting back to your intentions behind it.
Gotcha. What has the response been since you've put this out there, the article, and then also the fact that people can go see your YouTube and Instagram and so on? What kind of response have you had from people?
I think people think it's pretty awesome that I've done this. I mean, I think so too, but it's not really it's, if you knew my track record, it wouldn't be totally out there. I mean, I literally picked up and moved to Taiwan on a whim one time for 9 months. So it's not kind of this far out thing for me. Maybe the yurt life aspect of it. I truly never thought I would live in a yurt, but I think people find it inspiring. I hope that it gives people hope that they can do this in their own lives. I'm a single woman, attempting to start this massive garden this year and do all these projects on my own. And I hope that I can inspire other people to know that they can do it too. That's one of my biggest goals on top of just finding peace in my own life.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing. I will struggle with, this is so hard. I wish I had, sometimes I am in no way looking for a partner in any way, shape, or form, because I had one for a long time, and that was lovely, and that was a whole different life. And now my life is, I need to be single for quite some time. But I do find myself going, not pining away for who's going to share my bed. They wouldn't fit. I got dogs in my bed with me. And I don't want to share my space and my bed. The thought of that makes my throat start to close up. But I do have the thing of, this is hard. Like, running a couple, 3 different companies and doing everything that I do, and the dogs, and everything else, just and that goes on in your life, and your mental health struggles, or whatever is going on with you, and thinking, man, it'd be nice to have somebody that I could like check in with, that's in this with me, that I could bounce an idea off of, or they'll clean up the thing that just happened, or whatever. And then I remind myself, okay, wait a minute. You had that, and that was good, and it also posed other problems. How do you deal with that piece?
And this is a pretty constant struggle for me, because I do really love being alone. I love being on my own. For the first time in my life, I don't feel like I need to be with somebody or find somebody to feel like whole. It's a pretty amazing feeling. But I've been single. I've been in little relationships here and there since my divorce, but it's been 6 years. And I think I'm at a point where I'm ready to invite somebody into my life, but I'm trying to figure out what that means and what that looks like, and how do I not fall back in old codependent habits and patterns, and how do I not continue? My big thing was attracting in like a certain type of guy, so I don't want to start dating again until I can attract in the partner that I'm truly looking for. So I definitely struggle with that aspect of like wishing I had somebody here to help me and do this with, and laugh about things together. There are times when my pets do the funniest things, and it's like, man, I wish I had somebody here to laugh at this with me.
Right.
And then, there's like the spills or the cleanups, or it's like, oh man, I have to cook dinner and like feed them and walk them. Like that's the big thing, like walking my dog every day. I'm like, man, I wish I had somebody here to help me with this, because there's days I don't want to do this. And he's a puppy, so he has tons of energy. And then I work 2 other jobs, and I'm starting all my own stuff. And I'm a woodworker too, so I have my art. And so it's like I'm juggling all of this stuff, and I'm trying to simplify my life and do it all on my own. Yeah.
No, I get it. I get everything you're saying. I'm shaking my head. Yeah.
Well, the biggest thing that I've adopted, which I never understood, was this concept of boundaries. And it's like, okay, you figure out exactly who you are, Amanda, get into an alignment, and then everything else goes. So literally that's what I've been working on. It's like anything that does not feed me, like emotionally and mentally, and quite literally goes. And like that's been huge. Like saying no to invitations when it's like, like I'm just probably doing this to fill my time, and giving myself that space to have that time. Saying no to like job opportunities that aren't going to get me going in the right direction. So that's been a lot of that over the last couple months, which is scary too. But
it is. It is when you sit and you go, you are like, I don't have family. There for various reasons that my listeners already know about, but I don't have that. And I don't have even my parents to go, oh, okay, I have this backup. No, it's literally just me. I'm other people's backup. I don't have a backup for me other than me. And that sometimes, if I really think about it, I'm like, okay, a lot of people have that, not just you, Kristen, just kind of, then it also gives you a huge amount of freedom. So just, to everybody lives different lives. I try to talk myself off of ledges, emotional ledges sometimes about those kinds of things.
Oh, I can relate to that. I do have a family, but I think this is one of the areas I've been dissecting over the last year is that I'm not as close to them as I thought I was, or in the way that I want to be. And I mean, if something
Mhm.
like drastic happened, I know that they would be there. But my mom's going through her own um, fight with cancer right now, her fourth diagnosis in her
Mm.
lifetime, and her second in a year. And, she was my number one support system. And that whole dynamic has shifted completely. Like I can't turn to her anymore the way that I used to. And so I definitely relate to that aspect of like when I step back sometimes it's like, oh man, I'm all alone. Like if I got cancer again living out here, like I'm all alone. And that is a scary thing. But at the
Right.
same time, I'm living the life that makes me happier. So there's a payoff. Like there's a balance there. And also like investing and building relationships outside of like your blood family has been huge for me.
Right.
Like
And it
creating,
takes work.
yeah,
You have to freaking work at it. That's what people don't kind of understand, I think, is that there's an art to it, and there's a misstep and then it's okay, and a misstep and then it's okay. I mean, it's practice,
hmm,
and you have to put in effort to those relationships outside of family because they aren't your family.
yeah, definitely. Like your family's just kind of there, and
Right.
I think that's something that I've recognized. And I don't have like the dynamic with my family that I really want, like the depth, like the emotional depth. And so that's something that I'm trying to cultivate in my life with like friendships right now. And that, because that's really important to me. So in a way, I'm choosing my family more.
Yes. It's a much more enriching experience for sure, but it definitely takes that work. I wanted to ask you this too about the, living out on your own and carving this out and trying to think about, well, maybe a relationship, but that you don't want to go back to those codependent patterns, things like that. I've been thinking about that too. Not that I want to get in one, but if I ever did, I think about that also. And I wondered, do you feel like the time alone, because I actually had someone ask me this, if I felt like the time alone was me sort of hiding out, or if I feel like I'm building up a nice reservoir of proper boundaries and what I will and will not tolerate. And I'd say it's the latter, but someone else argued with me that no, it takes being in all these relationships to learn that stuff.
Yeah. I I would say that me being alone, like really alone, where I was intentionally not dating for the last, I mean, I was dating somebody right before I moved and then we ended it very like abruptly. And he was somebody that I truly thought that we'd be together for a while. And and then I kind of stepped back and I was like, oh, why do I keep getting this wrong, so to speak? Like I keep thinking that these people are the people and then they turn out not to be. So for me, it's just been like intentionally not dating and being single. And so that I can really kind of sift through all of my past and figure out how to not continue to do that. But I would say that I also do it out of like protecting myself too. Um, I'm definitely more cautious now and I'm a little bit reserved with dating, but or inviting somebody into my life because I'm scared that I'm going to fall back onto old patterns.
Hmm.
But I've also never been more comfortable in my skin and being alone.
Yeah.
Like there's a true happiness there that I've never felt. And that's kind of exciting. And I want to keep doing that too. So
I know. I think about it like, okay, I'm out there, a lot of good friendships, and then I also have this alone time. But what I'm learning from the alone time is, what is it that I like? What
mm,
is it that is tolerable, for me, and what just simply is not tolerable? And having the reserve because of this alone time and really putting the time into myself to where I want to say no. I don't even have to question it because I just simply won't,
mhm.
you know, deal with whatever. I won't have this narcissistic, unhealthy, person in my life that, that showed up for a long time in many different versions, because I know myself. I'm not empty.
Yeah. I think also as you find your self-worth, I kind of look at it like you can't even see those people anymore when they do come into your life.
Yes.
That's something that I'm recognizing. Like the more I don't like saying work on myself, but the more attention I pay to myself and kind of fill all those holes inside on my own, the less I attract in the kind of men that I was attracting in, and the ones that I felt like they needed to fill all those holes. And that's been a really, I used to always there's all this stuff that goes around social media and whatnot. And they're like, you have to love yourself first. And I would be like, okay, but how do you do that? And it's like, I finally understand that first. I finally understand what that means. And there's a part of me that doesn't want to give that up. So yeah.
Same here. I get it. That's why I'm like, nope, my bed is for me and my dogs. That's it. For the foreseeable future, you can have your own place maybe down the road, but it's not going to be here. I think that was part of, going really small too, is I didn't want to, I have been such a person, and that's turned out wonderful as well, but not wonderful in other ways where, everything I have is yours if it's going to help you. And now I don't do that like I used to. And I got a place so small that nobody else would fit in it.
Yeah. There's that too. Yeah, I don't think I'd ever want to live with somebody in a year. Like I was thinking about that this morning in regards to dating. I was like, well, you know what? This is really fun for me to do for however long. But if I end up with somebody, and then we'd have to move into a home, I think. Like I wouldn't want to live in a year with somebody. And
no escape.
Yeah. And I just kind of decided that until I'm not going to seek it out. I mean, I'm going to set the intention that I'm open to meeting somebody, but I'm not going to go back on dating apps and dating sites. And I'm just going to let it organically happen when it's supposed to happen. And that's when I feel like I know it'll be right, because it'll be easy and flowy, and there won't be all the drama that I was once attracted to. And until then, I'm just going to live in my yurt and garden and be super happy.
Exactly. Well, tell my listeners where they can find out more about you and see your videos and so on.
Yeah. Well, I have a blog, so I'm a pretty active blogger, and I blog about simplifying life and yurt life and farm life, and just my thoughts in general, and that's amandawhitworth.com. I'm on Instagram, that is _sawdust and soul, and then YouTube, and it's my name, Amanda Whitworth.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much first for writing that article, and for coming on and just off of me saying, hey, to my assistant Regina, please, oh my gosh, a soul sister. I don't know how old she is. She's probably half my age, but whatever, it doesn't matter. I get what she's doing. So thanks for coming on and agreeing to talk about it.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I'm a lot older than people think I am. So I would say that I'm almost 40 next year. So proudly.
Okay. Yes. I thought you were in your late 20s or early 30s. So.
Yeah, I get that all the time, but nope. But thank you so much for having me on. I love talking about all this stuff. It brings me a lot of joy.
And it's so healing. People don't realize, gosh, don't we deserve to put all that love and care and gardening into ourselves?
Oh, absolutely.
So many mental illnesses would, not exist or go away if we were taught how to do that. And I'm not blaming anybody for not doing it or saying you should do it. God, I don't mean that at all. I just mean, we aren't taught to do these things. So it's people like you that go out there and say, okay, I'm doing this. This is what it looks like. This is da-da-da. And that helps teach people that it's possible.
Yeah. Oh, I could talk about this for hours. I mean, there's just so much of it is our societal pressures and media and the shoulds. And once you step back and you realize that you got to actually create the life, everything is a choice and you get to choose what you truly want for yourself. There's nothing in this world that says that you have to live a certain life. And that
Absolutely.
was literally the most powerful thing I came to understand, was that despite what my family, friends, whoever, whether they like it or not, if it makes me feel authentic and true, then like that's what I'm going to do.
That's how I feel too. I mean, I don't live an abnormal life compared to a lot of my friends because we're all a lot alike, but to, let's say, most of my family, I do.
Yeah.
And I think I don't care.
Yeah.
They're the ones calling me when they're struggling with mental illness. So.
But never without good intentions. I heat up and act on my emotions.
Thanks so much for listening to Mental Health News Radio. Our podcast can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, and hundreds of other podcast apps. Or you can visit our website at mentalhealthnewsradio.com. If you have a question or would like to be a guest, become a podcaster on our network, or join the amazing organizations that help keep us on the air, please email us at info@mhnrnetwork.com. Get ready for that special goodbye from our resident therapy dog, Miles, and a special thanks to Emily Sohn for letting us use her incredible song, Cordial, for our podcast music. Listen to the full song on SoundCloud at emily.sonne.
Don't be surprised when I don't hate on you. After all, we promised we'd be cordial. Sometimes in you I can fight it.
Good boy.